Some men think no contact is just about ignoring a woman to make her miss you, but the truth is far more powerful and far more unsettling than that. No contact is not a game. It is a psychological tool that shifts dynamics, exposes intentions, and forces both men and women to confront the truth of their connection. And here's the part most men overlook. When you disappear from her world, you don't just affect her actions, you affect her mind in ways that can be surprising, revealing, and sometimes uncomfortable. This is what we're diving into today, the dark psychology of no contact with women. I'm talking about what actually happens when you stop texting, calling, or showing up. How she starts to process your absence. How her mind fills in the blanks. How curiosity, ego, and even fear start working behind the scenes. Most men jump into no contact thinking it will magically make her realize your value. The reality is more complex. Her reactions can tell you more about her true feelings, her priorities, and her character than any conversation ever could. No contact is not about punishing her or making her chase. It's about creating a natural shift in the dynamic. It's about stepping out of a pattern where you constantly give and she passively receives. When you disappear, her brain starts to do the work you used to do in keeping the connection alive. And the most interesting part is that this work happens subconsciously, before she even admits anything to herself or anyone else. Understanding this psychological shift gives you insight into her behavior, her intentions, and her level of investment. It's a tool for clarity, for self-respect, and for seeing situations as they truly are without emotional distortion. But it's also a double-edged sword, because no contact can backfire if you do not understand the underlying dynamics and the subtle ways women respond when a man removes his presence. So if you're ready to explore the truth behind no contact and why it works on a deeper psychological level, welcome to the channel. Here, we break down female behavior and male strategy in a way that is simple, clear, and eye-opening. Today, you're going to learn what really happens when a man stops showing up, and why understanding this could change the way you approach every interaction in your dating life. 1. Why no contact feels like a threat. When you stop contacting a woman, the very first thing she notices is the absence itself. It may seem simple to you, just silence, just space, but to her, it feels like a disruption of everything she was used to. Women get accustomed to patterns. They notice consistency, even if they never fully acknowledge it. When you pull back, that pattern breaks, and suddenly she is forced to notice what she took for granted. This is where no contact becomes powerful. It challenges her comfort zone, and the disruption feels like a threat. She starts scanning her mind for answers. Why isn't he texting? Why isn't he replying? She looks for reasons, even when none are obvious. The human mind hates uncertainty, and women are no different. That uncertainty triggers a psychological response. Her brain begins to weigh possibilities. Did I push too far? Did he lose interest? Is he seeing someone else? Even if she never verbally admits it, this mental questioning begins almost immediately. Think about a man who has been texting a woman regularly for weeks. He sends good morning messages, checks in after work, and keeps conversations flowing. She responds, sometimes enthusiastically, sometimes casually, but she's used to the attention. One day, he stops. No calls, no messages, no social media interaction. She notices. At first, she may shrug it off, tell herself it's no big deal. But as hours turn into days, the absence begins to hit her in ways she wasn't expecting. That small gap now feels like a void. She begins feeling anxious and restless. Her ego senses a shift in control. She begins evaluating her own behavior in the interaction. This is the essence of the threat. No contact isn't about punishing her. It's about creating space where her mind has to confront the reality of your absence. She starts reflecting on your value without your influence, without your words shaping her perception. That threat doesn't always come with dramatic feelings. Sometimes it's subtle, a quiet tension she can't ignore. It wakes her up to your importance, the role you played, and the fact that your presence is not guaranteed. 2. How silence changes her mind. Silence does something powerful in a woman's mind. When you stop reaching out, you stop giving her the constant reassurance she has grown used to. That absence forces her to think about you in ways she never did when you were always available. The human mind tends to fill gaps, and her brain begins replaying your interactions, analyzing your tone, and remembering the little things you did that added value to her life. When a man is always present, a woman can take his attention for granted. She doesn't need to think much about him because she assumes he will always be there. No contact interrupts that assumption. Suddenly, she has to fill the space you left. She starts asking herself questions like, why did he stop? Was I too distant? Did I say something wrong? That's the start of a subtle, internal shift in how she perceives you. Your silence changes the way she views the connection. The man who was once easy to have now becomes someone she has to consider. That thought process sparks reflection and even evaluation of her own feelings. She starts realizing the level of effort you put in, and she may begin to notice the contrast between your consistency and the way she acted. Your absence highlights the gaps in her own behavior and forces her to confront the fact that she may have underestimated you. This shift is rarely instant. At first, she might not notice it consciously, but internally, the gears are turning. She begins paying more attention to your past actions, how you treated her, and how your presence made her feel. She may even feel a subtle pull to reconnect, not because she wants to chase you, but because her mind is compelled to resolve the tension your silence created. 3. The ego hit. She can't ignore. When you implement no contact, one of the strongest reactions a woman experiences is an ego hit. Most men underestimate this because it isn't loud or obvious at first. It's subtle but deeply effective. Her ego is used to being fed attention, reassured constantly, and feeling like she has control over the dynamic. When that attention disappears, her mind instantly perceives it as a challenge to her status in your life. Her ego starts asking questions before her emotions even get involved. She wonders why you stopped reaching out. She thinks about whether she misread your intentions. She examines her own behavior and starts comparing it to the attention you used to give. Even if she didn't outwardly care before, internally, her mind is triggered. She experiences a quiet but growing tension because the validation she relied on is gone. This is where the power of no contact becomes clear. It forces her to confront the reality that your presence and attention are not guaranteed. She begins to notice the small things she may have dismissed, the way you used to listen, how reliable you were, or how much effort you invested. That gap between what she expected and what she is now experiencing creates a tension that she cannot ignore. The ego hit also pushes her to evaluate her own value. She asks herself whether she deserves a man who can step back without chasing, someone who doesn't beg for attention or validation. This evaluation is unconscious, but it changes the way she thinks about you. A woman who was confident in her ability to maintain control suddenly finds herself in a space where she has to reconsider how much influence she really has over your actions. At this stage, her internal dialogue often becomes more active. She starts noticing patterns she ignored before, reflecting on her past reactions, and even questioning her own choices. Your silence highlights not just your value, but also her previous complacency. The ego hit is powerful because it sets the stage for emotional curiosity, anxiety, and sometimes even a desire to reconnect. 4. When she starts questioning her choices. After the initial ego hit, a woman begins to question her own choices. When you remove yourself through no contact, she starts reflecting on how she acted in the relationship or connection. She asks herself whether she took your attention for granted, whether she was too distant, or whether she acted in ways that pushed you away. This stage is subtle but critical because it forces her to evaluate herself without your influence. Her mind begins running through scenarios and what-ifs. She thinks about moments when she didn't show enough interest or when she acted indifferent. She wonders if she misread signals or failed to appreciate your presence. The absence of communication creates space for reflection, and the questions she asks herself are often uncomfortable. They challenge the narrative she may have been telling herself about the connection. At the same time, she starts noticing contrasts. She compares the effort you put in with her own effort. She sees patterns she may have ignored when you were constantly available. These reflections can bring a sense of regret or discomfort because she begins realizing that she might have mismanaged something valuable. Your absence highlights her own choices in a way that nothing else could. This questioning also touches on her perception of value. She starts wondering what kind of man you are, why you have the ability to step back, and why you are not reacting like other men might. That thought process forces her to consider your standards and whether she is meeting them. She realizes that if she wants your attention back, she might have to adjust her behavior or reconsider her approach. Her reflections are often mixed with emotional responses. She may feel curiosity, a hint of anxiety, or even a sense of longing. But it all stems from the psychological impact of no contact. She cannot ignore your absence because it forces her to confront the reality of her decisions. 5. How curiosity turns into anxiety. Once a woman has started questioning her choices, curiosity begins to grow, and that curiosity often turns into anxiety. No contact creates a gap that her mind struggles to ignore. She begins thinking about you more frequently, wondering why you stopped reaching out and what you are doing instead. That mental space you leave opens the door for emotional tension she cannot control. The anxiety isn't about dramatic feelings at first. It's subtle, quiet, and persistent. She notices the empty space where your attention used to be. She feels restless when she doesn't hear from you. Even small details, like your name not appearing on her phone or seeing a post you didn't comment on, start triggering thoughts about your absence. The more she tries to rationalize it, the more she feels the pull of uncertainty. Sometimes this anxiety pushes her to test the situation. She might check her messages multiple times, scroll through old conversations, or even consider reaching out without fully admitting it to herself. Her mind is working overtime because she wants to resolve the tension your silence has created. The unknown is uncomfortable for her ego, and it motivates her to find answers, even if subconsciously. Imagine a man who suddenly stops texting a woman he has been seeing for a few weeks. She notices immediately, at first shrugging it off. But by the second or third day, her curiosity turns into internal pressure. She starts thinking about what she could have done differently. She wonders if she misinterpreted his intentions. The mental energy she spends on these thoughts grows, and she begins feeling the subtle edge of anxiety that she didn't experience before. This stage is where the psychological impact of no contact becomes evident. Her curiosity is not passive. It drives behavior and thought patterns that reveal a lot about her priorities. It exposes how much she values your presence, how aware she was of the effort you put in, and how uncomfortable she is with losing that consistency. 6. The subtle ways she tries to test you. Once a woman feels the pull of your absence and her curiosity turns into anxiety, she often starts testing the waters. These tests are usually subtle. She may like one of your social media posts, comment casually, or send a seemingly innocent message. The goal is not always to reconnect fully. It's a way to gauge your response and see if you are still available, still interested, or still affected by her actions. Testing is her way of measuring your value without fully exposing her own vulnerability. She wants to see if you chase, if you react emotionally, or if your absence has truly created a shift. A man who doesn't respond, or who maintains calm and consistency, shows her that he operates on his own terms. That in itself is powerful. It sends a clear message that your attention is not automatic, that your presence must be earned, and that your boundaries are real. The tests can take many forms. Sometimes it's a playful message, asking a casual question. Other times it's a post she knows you will notice. Occasionally, she may even bring up a topic you discussed before to see if you engage. These are not accidents. They are subconscious ways for her to measure the impact of your no contact. She wants to know if the dynamic has changed and if she has the ability to influence it. This stage reveals the true psychology behind no contact. It is not about punishing her or manipulating her feelings. It's about observing how she responds when your attention is no longer guaranteed. Her tests expose patterns of behavior, her level of investment, and her willingness to meet you on equal terms. They also highlight whether she values your presence for what it is, or simply because it is convenient. For men, understanding these subtle tests is critical. Many react too quickly, too emotionally, or with too much eagerness, which immediately shifts the power back to her. The key is to remain grounded, calm, and aware. Your response, or lack thereof, teaches her about your standards and your boundaries. It forces her to assess her own intentions while demonstrating that your value is not dependent on her behavior. 7. What men often get wrong about no contact. Many men think no contact is just a waiting game or a way to punish a woman into realizing their value. That's where most go wrong. No contact is not about manipulation or ego. It's about clarity, boundaries, and allowing the dynamic to shift naturally. If a man approaches it with the wrong mindset, he risks undermining himself and missing the point entirely. One common mistake is breaking no contact too soon. Men often give in when they see signs she's reacting. Maybe a text, a like on social media, or a subtle message. They assume that immediate engagement will secure her attention or rekindle interest. The reality is that responding too quickly can reverse the psychological impact your absence created. She may lose the curiosity, the tension, and the reflection that your silence has triggered. Another mistake is overanalyzing her reactions. Men sometimes spend too much time trying to figure out exactly why she behaves a certain way or interpreting every small signal. No contact works because it allows her psychology to play out naturally. Overthinking it often leads to impatience or insecurity, which can undo the benefit of stepping back in the first place. A third error is failing to reflect on your own behavior during no contact. Some men focus entirely on what she is thinking or feeling, forgetting that no contact is also about self-respect and growth. Use this time to evaluate your own actions, your boundaries, and what you truly want in a relationship. Strength comes from understanding both sides of the dynamic. Constructive awareness is critical. If she reaches out, assess her intentions. Is she consistent? Is she genuinely engaging? Or is she simply testing your ego? If you respond, do so with clarity and calm, not desperation. The goal is not to chase her back into your life, but to see whether she values you for who you are and whether she is willing to meet you on equal terms. No contact is a tool, but it only works if a man understands the psychology behind it and maintains his standards. It reveals patterns, tests boundaries, and exposes true intentions. For men, the key takeaway is simple. Step back, observe, reflect, and stay grounded. The results are not always immediate, but they are revealing. Your silence can show her your value more than any words ever could. No contact is more than a strategy. It is a psychological shift. Many men think it's simply about ignoring a woman to make her chase, but the reality is much deeper. When you step back, you disrupt the patterns she's used to, and in doing so, you reveal truths about her feelings, her intentions, and her level of investment. Her mind starts working in ways that she may not even be aware of, questioning her choices, noticing her own behavior, and realizing the impact your presence had on her life. The controversial truth is that silence can be more powerful than any conversation. Men who chase constantly often miss the subtle dynamics at play. No contact exposes who truly values you and who was simply taking your attention for granted. It forces her to confront her ego, her curiosity, and even her fear of losing you. Your absence becomes a mirror showing her what she really thinks and feels, and that mirror is rarely flattering if she hasn't invested as much as she should have. This is also a time for self-reflection. No contact isn't only about observing her reactions, it's about understanding your own boundaries and what you want from a connection. It teaches you patience, self-respect, and the importance of valuing your own presence. The men who master this dynamic don't just create attraction, they create clarity, both for themselves and for her. I want you to share your experiences in the comments. Have you ever tried no contact and noticed a change in her behavior? Did it reveal something you hadn't expected? I'll read your stories and engage with you because understanding these dynamics is a conversation, not just a tactic. Remember, your silence carries more weight than words. It shows value, sets boundaries, and allows the truth to emerge naturally. Use it wisely, observe closely, and let the psychology of no contact work for you. The results will teach you more about women, relationships, and your own power than any advice ever could.